We can't do anything. The moment Mion said those words that had tormented him countless times, those words that were like a spell, and when he heard them, his whole body suddenly regained its calm. His emotions slipped away like they'd never been there, like a wave departing. And then, the world's color flipped inside out. His field of vision expanded. At that moment, his head grew remarkably cold. It felt as if his mind's volume had grown even larger than the classroom they were in. At that time, his soul was doubtlessly no longer in that small, petty vessel of his head, but floating in the air slightly above it. It was a mysterious feeling of release, Keiichi thought to himself. He broke free from the cramped confines of his skull and stretched out his roots in all directions, as far as he wanted to. It was a strange feeling, and one he'd never felt before. An odd sense of exhilaration. His sharpened senses caused him to transcend. His mind was sharper than a knife's edge, and he immediately decided that spending the time to let himself be crushed with grief would be an absolute waste. He began to erase all the garbage information from his brain he now considered useless. He expelled the now pointless emotions, presenting obstacles to action. Mayan, you curse it all you want. Curse our powerlessness all you want. He spoke aloud with great bitterness and an even greater resolve. Mian couldn't muster more than a confused gasp. If he could have taken back what happened by crying about it, he'd have cried all day. But the fact was, this is how things turned out. He couldn't take back what happened. The top priority then would be to prevent the situation from worsening further and to sever the chains of misfortune. Until this moment, he'd been looking at things so narrow-mindedly, he could scarcely believe it. To save Satoko, the only thing to do was to save Satoko. That's the only thing he thought about. He didn't allow himself to realize the most basic, direct, and certain way of removing the source of Satoko's unhappiness. No, he thought to himself. Actually, he realized it yesterday. But as for the means, he'd relied on some stupid curse from some dumb deity. He never considered carrying out the task himself. He would obliterate Satoko's uncle. There were plenty of ways to do it. This was a task that held infinite methods. Ironically, the method of saving Satoko required mostly money. But the method of killing that man required no money at all. He could kill him with the least amount of investment. The least amount of money suited him. It was only the weight of his life. He kept eliminating needless, worthless information from his head, replenishing it only with the knowledge he'd need to achieve his goal. In that moment, he used every cell in his body to think about how he'd kill him. The way he killed him didn't matter, not really. He would allow any method, from whatever time and whatever country, as long as it ended in a quick, certain death. As Keiichi began to think, he began to consider additional conditions. It would be not to get caught. Removing him was an act designed to return to the peaceful times they had with Satoko. If he was arrested in exchange for the removal, then they might as well have killed each other. With only him gone, they'd go back to their normal lives. That was his supreme objective, his ultimate goal. Kill him definitely, but definitely don't leave evidence either. Two alternatives at odds with each other. The condition of not leaving a track back to himself automatically narrowed down the number of murder methods. No witnesses was an absolute must. Fortunately, given the right time in Hinamizawa, there would be nobody around. He masterfully mentally reconstructed the land around Satoko's house. The number of pedestrians, different at different times. The movement algorithm of the neighbors. Would he lure him out or charge at the bastard? What would his weapon be? When and where would he carry this out? Where? It needed to be somewhere he wouldn't leave a trace. When? It needed to be as soon as possible for Satoko's safety, without wasting even a millisecond. This is absurd. Completely absurd. When he thought about it this way, it struck him how easy the act of killing was. If he could leave evidence, if he was just going to kill him, anyone could easily turn into a murderer. However, the conditions given prevented that. It told us doing so would get us arrested for sure. In the end, being arrested by the police was the final thing preventing people from committing homicide. He felt this was absurd, because if you went all the way out into the very middle of the ocean, you wouldn't leave any trace at all. Anyone would drop those they hated into the depths if they knew. It was all too easy to simply remove him. He could leave class right now, grab a metal baseball bat or something from the schoolyard, go to his house and attack him. The time he estimated would be 25 minutes. If he had wanted them to die trying to kill each other, it wouldn't even be minutes. He could do it in 1500 seconds. He knew just how much his continued existence depended on him. Tepe was nothing. He could expel him from this world within just 1500 seconds after making up his mind. From when he decided what to do, he only had 1500 seconds. In fact, if he ran full speed to Tepe's house, that number would go down even further. But he was still alive. He was still part of this world at this very moment, having torn Satoko's body and mind to shreds. And why was this? Because Keiichi was letting him live. Keiichi was permitting him to live, so he was alive. If he rescinded that permission in that moment, Tepe would be evacuating this mortal coil within 1500 seconds. It is a beleaguered belief that Keiichi let Tepe live to breathe even 1500 seconds more of air. Keiichi was taking that permission back, right here, right now. Tepe should thank Keiichi for letting him live until today. However, in actuality, he would need more than 1500 seconds. He could not just end Tepe. Getting back their old lives is far more important. It would only be Tepe who would be cleanly cut out of this world. They won't find a culprit. Keiichi would simply forget that he dirtied his hands on the likes of Tepe as naturally as he brushed his teeth before bed. So to do that, he would make a special exception for Tepe and give him more than 1500 seconds. He would give Tepe special permission to keep on living as he had until he could construct the perfect plan for his murder. At that moment, however, Keiichi had yet another sudden realization. You can't let that time go to waste. He knew. He would kill him quickly. He would remove him with certainty. He won't even waste much time to perfect that plan. Thinking back, tomorrow is Watanagashi. Last year on the night of Watanagashi, Satoko's aunt died. Her head had been busted open by some deviant, and her brains splattered everywhere. That's it, Keiichi had thought to himself. Tepe was someone who deserved to be given death on the night of Watanagashi. Keiichi could only silently declare to Oyashiro-sama, the patron deity of Hinamizawa. They called themselves a guardian, but they didn't protect Satoko. Cursing Satoko's family for the damn stuff was their own business, but now they've made Satoko unhappy when she didn't have anything to do with it. In that moment, Keiichi Maibara denounced Oyashiro-sama, the guardian deity of Hinamizawa, a failure. He did not need them. The village did not need them. As far as Keiichi was concerned, they should go back to the deepest, darkest part of their shrine this year. If Oyashiro-sama had simply cursed and killed both her aunt and uncle last year, none of this would have ever happened in the first place. The curse this year is not their responsibility. Keiichi Maibara would be the one deciding. It won't be the three families controlling the serial deaths behind the scenes. No, not some vague people who he could not tell from the facts before him if they were buffoons or not. This time, he would be the one to deliver divine judgment. Oyashiro-sama should not get in his way, and simply just watch. Stay quiet and watch. He would obliterate Tepe. He would wipe him off the face of the earth. He would be the only one to stomp out his very existence. Go away, disappear, and die, he declared to himself. I'll tear your heart apart just like you did to Satoko. I'll have your blood as payment, he said as a final promise to himself before letting out a fearsome battle cry in his heart.